And now more specifically about the subject of morality. And I want to give, let me read a little bit from a common way now of introducing morality or talking about morality that from objectivism's perspective is completely wrong. And then part of what I want to talk about is why it's completely wrong, what its positive perspective is for why this would be completely wrong. And this is, I'm sure some of you at least have encountered this kind of, these types of scenarios, which are called now the trolley problems or trolley problem in morality. And they pop up everywhere. So this is from Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion. And it's in the chapter where he's talking about the sort of the general issue of can you not have morality without God? So I'm sure have heard the kind of religious view that without God, morality is impossible. There would be no right and wrong, no good and bad. And so this is the kind of view that he's arguing against. And part of the whole framing of the discussion is in terms of moral dilemmas. And this is, so let me just read just a little bit of this. Moral dilemmas are variations on the theme of a runaway truck or trolley on a railway line which threatens to kill a number of people. The simplest story imagines a person, Denise, standing by a set of points and in a position to divert the trolley onto a siding. So you have a trolley going on a rail, it can be diverted to a siding, thereby saving the lives of 5 people trapped on the main line ahead. So you've got this railway car that's going down, and if it's not diverted, it's going to run over 5 people who for some reason can't get off the track. And the issue is, are you going to divert it? But here's the dilemma. So continuing from the book. Unfortunately, there is a man trapped on the siding. So there's not only 5 people on the main line who can't get off it and are going to be run over. There's someone on the siding but only one person who can't get off and he's going to be run over. But since he is only one, outnumbered by the 5 people trapped on the main track, most people agree that it is morally permissible, if not obligatory, for Denise to throw the switch and save the 5 by killing the 1. And then we ignore hypothetical possibilities such as that the one man on the siding might be Beethoven or a close friend. And then you get paragraphs after paragraphs of similar dilemmas, and there's all kinds of variations on this. So, I mean, one of the sort of famous or infamous ones now is, well, if it so happens that above these tracks there's a bridge, and you could push a large obstacle onto the tracks that would stop the train before it kills the 5 people. Well, you should obviously do that. Oh, but no, it turns out that it's a really fat man who you could push off the bridge. He'll fall on the tracks and stop the train. Is it moral? Is it permissible or obligatory to push him off the bridge onto the tracks? He's going to get killed, but you save the 5? Or is it obligatory not to do that? And this is the framing then, and it's a way of then, and it's often a way of introducing, like, these are hard moral questions. And this is why we need to think about the subject of morality. I'm not going to say much about this because I want to talk about the positive, but this is so not the way that Ayn Rand looks at ethics. It's hard to sort of overemphasize that point. But what I want to talk about is why. This is not the way that she looks at the subject of morality. And part of why I wanted you to read The Goal of My Writing and Art and Moral Treason is it should give you some evidence for thinking, yeah, this is not at all the way that she thinks about the subject of morality. She would never introduce a moral discussion with the trolley problem and what do you think we should do? And what actions here are morally permissible or morally obligatory? And what happens if there were two fat men? I mean, I couldn't imagine in a million years, if she were teaching and so on, that she would use this as a way to introduce morality. And it's not just because it's an issue of an emergency situation, though that is relevant to, I think, why this is alien to the way she thinks about the very subject of morality. But it's more than that. And so one of the reasons to bring up or to have you read The Goal of My Writing and the Art and Moral Treason is to sort of be in a context to think, yeah, this is not the way that she thinks about morality. But it's also to help activate. If one asked, well, how does she think about the subject of morality? And if you're trying to learn what the objectivist ethics is, and to think about the questions of ethics or morality, what are the questions? What are the issues? Why are these issues? What are different perspectives on them? What is a right perspective on them? There's a question of, well, what primarily should you look at? Or what is it, if not primarily, at least what is vital and indispensable to look at? And the Objectivist Ethics is one of the essays from the nonfiction that is vital to look at. This is the essay. I mean, it's a long, complex, I think Mohammed in the questions brought, this is a complex essay that is hard to fully understand, which I think is true. It's giving an overview of Ayn Rand's whole, you could say, system of ethics, from what she thinks is its deepest foundations to its application. So the application of objectivist moral principles to more social and even political issues. If you remember, I didn't ask you to read through the whole of the essay for this class. For next class, you should have. But in the later part of the essay, the basic social principle of the objectivist ethics comes up, and it's relevant to thinking about political philosophy. So you're really getting an overview of her system of ethics as a total. But it's important to get, it's an overview and it's a final perspective on the objectivist ethics. It's not where the objectivist ethics starts. It's where it ends. If I can use that kind of sort of metaphor. And the goal of my writing and art and moral treason indicate where I think ethics starts for objectivism. And part of what I hope they may have suggested or triggered in thinking about, like, how does objectivism think about the subject of morality, is that Ayn Rand was adamant that she did not have two careers. She did not have a career as a fiction writer and then a career as a philosopher, or a career as a nonfiction writer in philosophy. She viewed them as their aspects of a total approach. Now, it's true in the first half, or maybe a little bit more than the first half of her life, she's focused on writing novels. And in the second half of her life, or a little less than that, she's focused on writing nonfiction. But the novels are as you know, heavily philosophical. So it's not like she wrote the novels and then started thinking about philosophy. She's thinking about philosophy all through writing the novels. And more than that, as she says in The Goal of My Writing, her purpose is a moral purpose. Now, this is not true of every fiction writer, but it is true of Ayn Rand. And she's conscious of that from the outset, that her goal, as she says, so the goal of her writing is the projection of an ideal man. An ideal here crucially means a moral ideal. So and she thought of We the Living as, I'm not yet ready to project my conception of the ideal man, but it still fits into this whole goal. She could, as I think one of the ways she put it, she could convey some of what the sort of feeling towards and attitude towards the ideal would be, and towards the ideal man would be. And that's certainly pronounced in the character of Kira Argonova in We the Living. But part of what she stresses in The Goal of My Writing, and then what she thinks is more generally true about thinking about literature, is there's some kind of focus on morality, and I'll put it underneath that. There's a focus on character and characterization. I mean, if you're talking about constructing or writing a novel, on characterization. And I want to read a little bit, if I can find it quickly, from Art and Moral Treason, of the way that this is put, because I think it's important to get that this is the way that she thinks about ethics or morality and what the subject is. And in a sense, you could say what its basic question is. So this is partway through Art and Moral Treason. And she's talking about the development of a moral sense of life, which is connected to a development of understanding morality. And she writes, and that in today's culture, this is rarely aided. That is, that for a person who is on a path to trying to develop a moral sense of life and a real first-handed grasp of morality, he's rarely helped in regard to that, and usually hindered. And a paragraph and a half. But the development of a child's normative abstractions is not merely left unaided. It is all but stifled and destroyed. The child whose valuing capacity survives the moral barbarism of his upbringing has to find his own way to preserve and develop his sense of values. Apart from its many other evils, conventional morality is not concerned with the formation of a child's character. It does not teach or show him what kind of man he ought to be and why. And what kind of man he ought to be is all italicized. And why? It is concerned only with imposing a set of rules upon him. Concrete, arbitrary, contradictory, and more often than not, incomprehensible rules, which are mainly prohibitions and duties. A child whose only notion of morality, i.e. of values, consists of such matters as wash your ears, don't be rude to Aunt Rosalie, do your homework, help Papa to mow the lawn or Mama to wash the dishes, faces the alternative of either a passively amoral resignation leading to a future of hopeless cynicism or a blind rebellion. Observe that the more intelligent and independent a child, the more unruly he is in regard to such commandments. And I'll stop there. So two things, I highlighted one, which she highlights, as I said, she puts it in italics, what kind of man he ought to be. And the sentence before that, the formation of a child's character. That's the subject of morality for Ayn Rand. It is about the development of your character, or of identifying and then moving towards the kind of man you think you ought to be, or the kind of individual that you think you ought to be. But the goal is a total and a sum. It's, this is what I want to be, not some discrete choice. There's a trolley going 60 miles an hour and it's going to run into 5 people, and do you throw the lever or not? And that's what morality is about. That is such a derivative, if to the extent that it is a moral issue, it is such a derivative issue from Ayn Rand's perspective. And I think from her thinking about what is morality, it is about, you can lead different kinds of lives. What life are you going to lead and why? And that's an abstract perspective. And part of what she's stressing in Art and Moral Treason is there's a development to gain this abstract perspective on yourself and yourself in the world. And that a child is trying to get to this level of abstraction, particularly a child who starts to be concerned with this kind of issue. But it's the norm, not the exception, I think. When you ask a young child, what do you want to be in life? And it's, I want to be a policeman, or I want to be a fireman, or I want to be some other, it might be, as Ayn Rand brings up, a comic book figure that he admires or something like that. It's, this is what I want to be. And this is the person that I want to be. Not, this is the choice that I hope I make when a trolley is rolling down the trains. And what really forming the issues, questions, and sort of abstract perspective that morality is about is learning to see and to isolate that there are different kinds of lives. And your choice in life really is, which of these are you going to lead? And so to think of this as a specification of her perspective on philosophy, it's an aspect of her view, I think, that what philosophy is a set of ideas that have an integration. And they're wide abstract ideas that frame life, including the thinking about life and the reality that I'm in and how do I cope with it. But there's a kind of interconnectedness to this, even for the person who's not philosophical. And I think I brought up the metaphor she uses of a kind of mongrel philosophy, that there's some kind of threads and interconnections, even though it's certainly not consistent threads and interconnections, and there can be conflicts among the total. And the perspective on morality is particularly in regard to a person's character, and putting it in the philosophy who needs it terms, the what should I do? But part of the what should I do is, and the crucial part is, what should I become? And that's the issue of character and of the issue of premises, and how premises shape a whole perspective on life.